My mom is useless. I just wish she would die soon. Then this lake house will be mine. I stood silently, stunned behind the curtain behind them. The glass in my hand shook behind me. The guests laughed, and the soft clink of cutlery rang out like crystal bells. But inside me, silence fell because I realized he was still calm. As if he was just confiding in his friends something he had been thinking about for a long time. Brian shifted uneasily, but David only looked toward the dock and the stretch of land beyond it. Places like this, he muttered. Gotta be worth a few million. I stepped back into light voices and the cake glowing with too many candles. Someone called my name. I found my smile, the one that knows its job, and walked forward as if nothing had cracked open a few feet away. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed louder than the party. On the door, magnets held school photos and road trip souvenirs. In the center, a photo of Thomas in his firefighter dress. Blue's grin wide enough to throw light. Next to it hung my wedding band on a chain. The words echoed in my head as I moved among my family. My stomach felt hollow. My grandson ran to me with frosting on his chin and a card drawn in jagged crayons. I hugged him, tasting sugar and salt, hiding the hurt under the practiced smile. For years I had planned these birthdays, baked the cakes, and wrapped the presents. I had watched him learn to swim, cheered his first day at school, and wiped his scraped knees. This house had been the place of summer picnics, winter stories, the home where his grandfather taught him to mend nets. It was a place I had built with my hands and my savings, a place I had hoped would be a safe harbor for all of them. That night when the guests left and the house settled into a quiet that smelled of candle wax and lemon cleaner, I sat at the kitchen table and tried to breathe. The laughter had gone faint, but the sentence kept repeating. I just wish she would die soon. Then this lake house will be mine. My son had said it casually, as if plotting a garden outing. The casualness made it worse. It showed me he had thought about it, practiced it, believed in it long enough to say it out loud. At first my chest tightened with a pain that felt like loss. He was my boy. I had wrapped him in blankets, read him stories, taken extra shifts so he could go to the school his friends attended. I had sold small things so he could have the big things that made him proud. I had held him while he wept for his father. I had taught him to be kind. How did it come to this, that he would wish me gone? Grief turned to a different heat as the hours passed. I remembered the nights I had spent counting bills, the mornings before dawn sweeping floors at work. I remembered the day I signed the mortgage, the day I scraped together enough to put a down payment on the lake house so he could grow up running barefoot by the water. The house was not a thing without me. It was memory and sacrifice. He could not understand that because he had never had to choose between dinner and his school fee. I rose then and opened the old wooden drawer under the table where I kept paper and pen and the small chest of our family papers. My hand found the envelope with the deed. I had not moved that paper for years. When we bought the house, I had kept my name on the contract as a kind of quiet insurance. I had never trusted promises that easily. That paper felt like a secret shield in my hand. My son thought the property was already his. He had told me once, in a joking way, that I should relax, that he would take care of everything. I had smiled and nodded because at the time I wanted to believe him, not set a trap. In the days that followed, David and his wife carried on as if nothing had been said. They spoke about plans to renovate, about a summer party next year, about the shed they would convert into a studio. Guests flowed in and out, laughing in the sun on the dock. I listened and watched, pretending to be the doting mother, the grandmother who loved making sandwiches for the kids. But my ears had new work. I began to notice the small slips, the casual phrases that let the plot breathe. David mentioned a lawyer Brian knew, a quick signature, a hospital that would be convenient. His wife left brochures on the counter with pictures of modern kitchens and estate agents penciled in phone numbers. One afternoon, I walked the garden path and watched him measure the deck with a tape he had left behind. His brow furrowed, not with the worry of a parent, but with the calculation of a man who counts money in sunsets and potential buyers. A small cold rage rose in me, not the reckless burning of youth, but a sustained, steady fire. He had forgotten that I had kept the deed. I did not rush. I wrote notes in a small book I carried now, details of conversations, times, names, the casual statements I overheard. Evidence, I told myself, is quiet work. Revenge does not need to trumpet itself. It must be precise. I called an old friend who still worked at the county records office and asked a favor for a favor. He confirmed what I suspected. The deeds still listed my name. The house was mine on paper, as it had always been until a formal transfer took place. He warned me gently that families sometimes make mistakes and sometimes they make crimes. Keeping calm was not only dignity, it was strategy. I also spoke quietly to neighbors who had seen me move in, who remembered the day I painted the swing on the back porch and the children chasing frogs in the marshy edge. Their recollections were tiny truths I began to collect. A woman across the street remembered the handwritten check I had given years ago for the initial payments. A man at the hardware store handed me a receipt for the lumber I had bought to fix the dock after a storm. Small papers in an old box can form a wall against a river of lies. Meanwhile, David and his wife grew bolder. They pressed me to hand over anything, to sign forms that would let them manage the property for my convenience. They said it would be easier. They said I could have a comfortable life with less worry if they handled the estate. They painted a picture of kindness, and I played the part of the naive mother who could not keep up. I smiled, I thanked them, I ate their food, and I stored every brochure, every printed contract, every whispered promise into a binder I kept hidden under my bed. One evening, when they thought I was asleep, I went to the small desk at the end of the hall and picked up the phone. It was about teaching a lesson that would reach further than a single courtroom. It was about my grandson learning that elders are not disposable. It was about telling the boy that the woman who had given him mornings and mended shirts and took him to the doctor was worthy of respect. I wanted to stop the lesson of greed before it became his inheritance. Then, one damp morning, the first small victory arrived. A polite letter came from my lawyer, the envelope thick with a statement. He had placed a legal notice on the property that would prevent any transaction without my knowledge. The realtor who had laughed and penciled ideas now called my son to say that the sale was on hold. I watched from the kitchen window as a small argument flickered between them. They had been careless in celebration. Greed makes small mistakes. My son came into the house that night, his face tight, his voice strained with the kind of pride that has lost its balance. He tried soft words, then raised his voice. "Why are you making this difficult?" he demanded. "Why are you blocking what is good for the family?" I looked at him across the table where the coffee had gone cold and felt a strange compassion wrapped in a firm resolve. I told him calmly that the house was not a prize to be won by wishing, that it carried memory and care, and that I would not let it be turned into a commodity between those who only counted its value in dollars. He attacked me with words, calling me stubborn, old-fashioned, useless. For a moment the old hurt opened, but I kept my face quiet. No theatrics. No begging. Instead, I handed him a small envelope. Inside was a list of receipts, of payments, of the checks I had written when he was a boy. I told him simply that truth does not age, and that in a month the bank would see paperwork that matched the claims I had made. He folded like bad paper under a weight. When the legal hearing finally came, the room smelled like polished wood and printed papers. My son arrived with the breath of confidence and a hand on his wife's arm. They expected a fast decision in their favor, a shrug, a polite exit, and new curtains. Instead, the judge read facts out loud. The deed listed my name. Transfers require consent. Attempts to transfer by coercion are not legal. I watched my son as judgment landed like rain. His face went from crimson to gray. Humiliation is not loud. It is cold and precise. Outside the court, the town spoke softly, and then more loudly. People who had once nodded with approval now averted their gaze. My son and his wife moved out, not in a scene of dramatic shouting, but in the quiet shame of packing boxes that smelled of ambition. They left behind small things, a plant, a set of plates, but more importantly, they left the idea that a person could be tossed aside. I did not dance on their ruin. I did not broadcast my victory on social media. I cleaned the rooms I had once patched and painted, fixed the light in the study, and put the toy Thomas had loved back on the shelf. I took my grandson onto the dock and taught him how to skip stones. He laughed and did not know the battles I fought for him. That was the right kind of victory. When he hugged me, sticky with cake and honest, I felt a mending that was stronger than any court order. The lake house remained mine, a place of memory and stubborn love. My son learned, slowly and awkwardly, that greed can make you foolish and that some treasures are not measured in offers and contracts. He came to visit sometimes, hands empty but face softer. Not every wrong was erased, but I had shown that even a quiet woman has an edge and that age hides a cunning that surprises those who count only years.